in a very real sense, today, especially this vigil of the first Sunday of Advent, is the church's New Year's Eve. We begin a brand new liturgical year with the coming of the first Sunday of Advent, a new time of grace, a new time to hear the story of our salvation, and we'll especially focus in on Matthew's gospel throughout this new liturgical year. So this is a fresh start, a new beginning. But it's interesting how the church gives us kind of the end of the story as the first gospel for this brand new year. This gospel from Matthew takes place on chapter 24. There's only 28 chapters of Matthew's gospel, so we're very near the end, and most of what follows after Matthew's gospel is the story of our Lord's passion, his Good Friday, his betrayal, and ultimately Holy Saturday, Easter Sunday, and his resurrection, and leading up to Pentecost. And so in Matthew's gospel, we're sort of leapfrog from the very beginning to really very much towards the end. And of course, we are given this word of warning on this first Sunday of Advent to stay awake, to be watchful, to throw off those deeds of darkness and to be ready to live in the light. And we're given this rather scary gospel of these images of two people being out in the field or doing their work, and one going, one being left behind. And we hear about a thief breaking into somebody's house and not wanting that to happen and staying awake. So there's a sense of deep urgency, a sense of deep preparation. But how do we be prepared for our Lord's coming? In a practical way, how are we prepared? Again, this gospel came from Matthew 24, and our Lord is predicting his passion. He's about ready to enter into Jerusalem, and of course, we are getting towards the end of his gospel, so we will be hearing about his Holy Week if you were to follow beyond that. But there's something sandwiched right in between these two events, where Lord gives all these predictions of his passion, his death, and this urgency to stay awake, and also ultimately his sacrifice, and that is Matthew 25. And in that gospel, our Lord does something unique, especially in Matthew's gospel, as he says the same story basically 4 different times. Again, sandwiched between the prediction of his Holy Week and this urgency for us to stay awake and the story of his Holy Week is this parable of sheep being separated from goats. On the right are the goats that are the sheep that we brought in the kingdom, and of course on the left he keeps the goats separated. And this is how he separates those sheep from goats. Come, you who are blessed by your Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. A stranger, and you welcomed me. Naked, and you clothed me. Ill, and cared for me. In prison, and you visited me. And what our Lord does, he just says how the righteous answers, when did we see you do all these things? And of course, he'll say, when I was hungry, he gave me food. And those who are cursed will say, when did we not do these things? And he'll say, when they did not do these to the least of my brothers and sisters. That he really says the same thing 4 different times over and over. I was hungry and you fed me. I was hungry, you did not feed me. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was thirsty, you did not give me drink. Ill, and you cared for me. Ill, and you did not care for me. Between our Lord's prediction of his passion, between his stern warning for us to stay awake, and his true sacrifice on the Good Friday, is he gives us the recipe how to be prepared. It's really pretty simple. It's how do we love and care for each other? How do we be good to each other? How do we foster growth and health and life-giving things in our world? Or how do we not do those things? How do we share the goodness that God has given us, that we are thankful for this day? And of course, we just celebrated the great day of Thanksgiving. How do we be thankful for these things and then hopefully be led to a little more generous heart? In Matthew 25, our Lord says the same thing 4 different times. How we be good to each other is important for our own spiritual life, of keeping us attentive to his call, of really taking the goodness that we know that he has shared with us and making it active in the world today. So I think it's good that we take a stern warning from this gospel for ourselves. And to think about, is there somebody that we need to perhaps forgive or to ask forgiveness of? And to strive and work for that, especially as we go through the next 4 weeks of Advent? Do we have physical things in our lives that take up too much space, take up too much time, take up too much of our own energy and attention, and maybe get rid of a physical thing that is perhaps an obstacle to us? Is there a way we can share some of God's goodness that he has shared with us with somebody who may be in need? Maybe there's somebody at a nursing home that you need to call or visit. This first Sunday of Advent is really kind of a stark set of readings if we really pay attention to them. It is about staying awake. It's about what we value in life and what is important to love and us and how we're going to put that into practice. And we're given the reminder that while we're on this good green earth, as much time as God gives us to be on his good green earth, we have one job. That's to love and care for each other the best that we can. To foster his kingdom by our words and by our actions, how we live out our lives. To be a people of hope, even in the midst of the darkness that can be around us. To be that prophet, always pointing the way to that voice that calls to us in the midst of this wilderness. It is a stern warning, and we have to listen to that warning. Because what our Lord is calling us to is his very self, to the life that only he can give us, to his salvation that will ultimately be poured out for us on that Good Friday, that leads to resurrection, that leads to new life, that ultimately leads to his kingdom. This first Sunday of Advent is a new day, a fresh start for all of us. And I pray that we all hear his voice. We all make our way towards that good light of his. And through our own words, through our own actions, through our life of faith, that we can somehow radiate that goodness that God has already given us to those around us. So we truly can be this people of hope.